Hello, everybody, and welcome to At the Book. Devin Jackson live from Caesars Sportsbook. I'm Jim Derry along with Spencer Urquhart, and we have a jam-packed Thursday show for you. We're going to get right into it. I thank Devin for going to Harris for me since I am in COVID quarantine. Luckily enough, no one can catch it from a microphone through the internet. That's it. That's the good news for you. We are live today. We came on a half an hour later because we wanted everyone to be able to enjoy LSU men's basketball game. And although they got a little sloppy there at the end, they come away with a 76-68 victory over the Missouri Tigers. They will advance tomorrow. They will play the Arkansas Razorbacks at 1:30 p.m., number 4 against number 5 in the SEC quarterfinals. We will be talking about basketball in just a little bit. Want to start off with the breaking news of today, and the breaking news is that Major League Baseball, the owners and the players have reached an agreement. And Spencer, good news for baseball fans. Yesterday we were talking about postponing the start of the season all the way back to April 14th. We didn't know when they were going to start. Now it's back up to April 7th. They're still going to play a 162-game schedule. They've given in, and the breaking news is that there will be a designated hitter now in the National League, boo, and a 12-team postseason. So baseball is kind of getting more in line with some of the other leagues. Us traditionalists don't necessarily like that, but you younger folk probably do.
Yeah, I'm happy with the DH thing, but not so much about the expanded postseason. I'm an advocate for these leagues, the NBA, NFL. There's too many teams in the playoffs. But yeah, I'm glad there's a universal DH. It was silly to have it split like that. I mean, it's all MLB, like make it one or the other. So I'm glad it's universal now in that regard. But I'm pleasantly surprised they got this deal done. I was not expecting that. When that news broke, I was like, wow, I was pleasantly surprised. I was thinking they were going to cancel at least the first 2 weeks of the season and that a deal wouldn't be done by, until another week or two. But they got it done quick today, so I'm happy about that.
You said one way or the other. I would take the other. But I don't get to choose. So, Devin Jackson, your Atlanta Braves will be playing baseball on April the 7th. Spring training will start on Saturday. This is definitely good news for baseball fans and really sports fans throughout.
Yeah, it helps us with that little lull in between once March Madness ends and obviously football starts back up. NBA playoffs is going to be around that time. So we're not going to hit that lull that we would have hit, after March Madness. And then, I think a couple of weeks after that, we would have had the NBA playoffs. But it definitely is a big boost for, Major League Baseball. And hopefully we see more things like, kind of incorporating kind of the younger generation into baseball as well. I think it's going to be important to keep preserving that and making it more friendly for audiences younger and the crowd younger than us to get them engaged and make baseball popular again.
Well, they did help us older folk, as Uncle Big Nick points out. Thank goodness they made the bases bigger, so old guys like me can see them. So making the bases bigger. I'm not sure what that's going to do, but okay, maybe that's something important. I don't know. But just glad that baseball is coming back, and glad that they didn't extend this thing any longer. Because quite frankly, if had they waited any longer and dragged this thing out into May, they would have lost a lot of fans. We'll be talking about that tomorrow on Datitude. Doug Mouton of WWL TV will be my guest tomorrow, and Doug knows a whole lot about baseball as well. So we'll be diving into all sorts of topics tomorrow, including the LSU men's basketball Tigers. Before we get to that real quick, we don't have a graphic for it, but we have a new promotion coming up on Caesars Sportsbook. We will have a graphic for you by Monday. You can go to bet.NOLA.com and find out how we can help you. But if you go to bet.NOLA.com, you sign up for Caesars Sportsbook. If you haven't already, you will get a $1,100 insurance bet. In other words, if you make any bet, if you sign up your first bet anywhere up to $1,100, if you lose the bet, Caesars will guarantee it for you, and you will get a one-time bet for whatever that bet was worth. So if you bet, like I said, up to $1,100, let's say you bet 100 and you lose, you will get a $100 bet back free from Caesars. That is coming up. We will have that graphic for you on Monday, I promise. That's coming up. I do want to get back into the SEC tournament and the LSU Tigers. We told you they were 76-68 winner over the Missouri Tigers. They beat them by 20 just a few weeks ago. So this is quite the difference. We look at the schedule for tomorrow for the quarterfinals, and we see that LSU will play we made this graphic obviously before the game was over, but LSU will play Arkansas tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. The Tigers of LSU had to hold on there at the end, little sloppy. They were up by as many as in the 20s there in the second half. Afton Reed had an outstanding second half. He scored 10 points, and for the game, he was 6 for 6 from the field. Had a trouble with fouls, Devin, and we'll see how this impacts them going forward. If Afton Reed can be a big part of this team, he is their big man that can make some plays, just a little bit young, a little bit raw, but he has proven that if he can make some plays, this LSU Tigers team can be quite tough to handle.
Yeah, he's going to need to continue to play well for LSU, and LSU is going to have to close games better. And we talked about this a few weeks ago as well. Their struggles with closing games is only going to be magnified, once they continue into the SEC tournament and into the NCAA tournament. Obviously, they have a big game coming up against Arkansas, a team that they've been narrowly defeated by in both times that they played them. So it's really going to come down to how they execute down the last 5 minutes of the game. I think both teams are pretty evenly matched in terms of talent, but it's going to be up to LSU to really close the game and be able to show that they're a consistent team. That's been their biggest issue this year. It's been a tale of two teams this year, and hopefully we see the early side of LSU, and as they start to get healthy, I think they'll definitely play better as well.
And actually a tale of two teams, not just throughout the season, but at times in games. And today is a perfect example of that. They led big at the half. They came out and played awfully in the beginning of the second half, and Missouri was able to cut the lead to 10. LSU goes back on a run. Afton Reed gets big. Tyree Eason played very well. Again, rolling that lead out into the 20s, I think as many as 22, before Missouri kind of came back in there. LSU very sloppy with the basketball in the last 4 to 5 minutes. So it'll see. They will not be able to play that way against Arkansas to keep it rolling. Spencer, we have talked all season long about how strong the SEC is, but really the top of the SEC. If you look from 1 through 6, the top of the SEC is as tough as any conference in college basketball. We're going to find that out, I think, tonight, because I don't think either Tennessee or Kentucky are going to have a problem with any team that play tomorrow. But we do have some good games coming up. We'll talk about it later on in our daily best bet segment. We'll see South Carolina play Mississippi State in just a little bit. Then I'm really interested in Alabama Vanderbilt, because I think Vandy can actually hang with Alabama. They've grown more confidence along the way. But Alabama is supposed to be one of the top 6 teams. We'll see if they're able to pull away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say really that those top 4 to me that really stand out there: Auburn, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky. Those teams all have national title aspirations. I mean, LSU and Alabama can be tough, but I don't think they're consistent enough to make a Final Four run, or definitely not an all-the-way run. I just don't really trust them. They're just so up and down. They look good at times, and other times they just look just terrible. So I would say those 4, though, are all good, especially Auburn there at number 1. I think Auburn's got the best shot. I mentioned them before. I put a futures on them a few weeks ago, and watching them play, they just look like a complete team from top to bottom. So I'm thinking they could really make some noise there. But yeah, the SEC is pretty strong overall this year. Not really known as a basketball conference, but they've kind of changed that narrative this year.
Well, interestingly enough, Joe Lunardi of ESPN has LSU right now as a 5 seed. So whether that's true or not, I think the win today at least guaranteed them no worse than a 6 seed. So that's the good news for LSU. If they can win tomorrow against Arkansas and find a way to get into the semifinals and play strong against potentially an Auburn, I think they have a really good shot at 5 seed. And to me, there's a big difference as you go up higher, and this is being Captain Obvious here, but to me, there's really a big difference between 7 and 6. You want to avoid the 7 seed. You want to avoid the 8 seed, obviously the 9 and the 10 as well. Not going to have to worry about that. But if you can get to a 6 seed for LSU, I think that makes all the difference in the world, because then you're playing 11. Then potentially you win that. You play a 3 in the next round, a game that LSU can win, find a way to get to the Sweet 16. I think they really have potential to do that. So we'll see how they play tomorrow. It's going to be very interesting going down the line. They match up well with Arkansas. We saw it. They lost in the final moments. They led Arkansas throughout the entire second half just a week and a half ago. And so they're going to have to be on their A game. They're not going to be, if they get a lead, they're going to have to be able to find a way to keep it. They're also going to have to find a way to stay out of foul trouble and stop being sloppy with the basketball. As good as LSU is on defense, they have been very sloppy and they have gone dormant at times on offense. They'll have to find a way to fix that. Getting into the NCAA tournament odds. Look, Gonzaga's still at the top. Now, this was before today's games. And Devin, if you look, Arizona had to survive a huge scare from Stanford just a little while ago. And actually, there are a few number one seeds who had to survive scares earlier today. We talk about Providence just getting past Butler. They trailed throughout most of that game. And then Duke trailed Syracuse throughout most of their game before finally pulling away against Syracuse later in the game. Just goes to show, I think these conference tournaments show how vulnerable and how crazy I think this tournament's going to be, because anybody's going to be ripe for an upset.
Yeah, it's going to be an unpredictable season, and we know that Duke, obviously Mike Krzyzewski's in his last year, and most people are going to place a nice bet on them to make it to the Final Four and maybe even win it all. But, you know, those one seeds, it's added pressure. You know, it's March now, and you're going to get your best shot from everybody. These teams, like, for instance, Syracuse, how Providence had to hold on today, Stanford as well, they're trying to find their way into the NCAA tournament as well. We saw on the women's side of things, Kentucky, LSU lost to Kentucky in the first round of that tournament. Kentucky goes on to win the whole thing. So, you know, that it just shows you that, especially in these tournaments, you're playing the same team for a third time potentially. And it also shows just how little separation these top seeds have from other teams in the entire in the entire field. So I think it's going to be very interesting watching these tournaments unfold as we near Selection Sunday. And, you know, there's a good chance one or two of these teams on the list outside LSU and will not win their conference tournament, because it's that competitive on the men's side of things.
Yeah, Spencer, I almost wish there was a bet you could make to where you could bet a team, saying a team that doesn't win their conference tournament is going to win the national championship. Because outside of Gonzaga, which should steamroll their way to their conference championship, any of these teams could lose in the conference championship and not even make it to the conference championship, but yet still win the national title.
Right. Gonzaga already won there. So, it's just tough to know. I mean, to know who's going to win the national title. I mean, these odds of it, they're all long shots. I mean, when it's a 64-team field, everybody's a long shot as far as trying to pick one winner. So, yeah, I've got certain teams I kind of like, Arizona, like I mentioned before, Auburn, they've got teams I like, but it's just hard to know. I guess it's just one of those things. If you like a few teams, just place a little bit on each of those and hope they can go all the way, because with these long shot odds, you only have to put $5 or $10 to make a nice profit.
If there were ever a year for a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6 seed, someone like that to go on a hot streak and win the national title, I think this could be it. And with the Final Four being here in New Orleans, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Again, I really think this is going to be one of the better tournaments and more fun to watch. We had a good one last year, and we had a great Final Four, and maybe not so much the national championship game, but we had a great semifinals weekend, and I think we're going to have the same run this year. All right, moving on from college basketball. On to the NBA. We've talked a lot about the NBA odds, so we're just going to talk about tonight's a big night in the NBA, because 4 biggies are playing against one another, and especially in the Eastern Conference. You talk about Devin, Brooklyn, and the 76ers. These are two teams that I think that if you looked at the odds that we've been showing, either one of these two teams has an excellent chance of making it through and making it all the way to the finals. So we could have an Eastern Conference championship preview, I think, tonight. Nets and 76ers. And then if you look on the other side, we look at how strong Denver is and how they were able to come back against the Pelicans on Sunday night with a late little rally, getting the game in overtime. And I just, who knows with the Warriors? They're hot and cold. It's hard to bet against them because you never know if Steph's going to score 38 or if he's going to score 19. They're so really hard to tell. But I think tonight is one of those nights where if you're just sitting at home and you got nothing to do and you're more interested in pro basketball than college basketball, it's a great night to just sit and watch these two games.
Yeah, it's going to be a great slate tonight. Two matchups that could be, like you said, happening in the conference finals. this time in a few months. But for the Nets especially, I think this is a big game. Obviously, Ben Simmons traded to the Nets. James Harden traded away from the Nets to the 76ers. So that storyline alone is going to make this a big game. But the Nets are starting to play better basketball. Kyrie Irving scored 50 earlier in the week, and they got a win over the Hornets. I know they've still been a little inconsistent, but they have KD and Kyrie playing when Kyrie is allowed to play. So I think the Nets are maybe hitting their stride here over the next few weeks. But 76ers have looked good since the James Harden trade, and him and Embiid have made a nice duo. So I think just based on that alone, I think it's going to be a great game. And then you look at the other matchup. Steph Curry's kind of fizzled down here down the stretch. He isn't playing like the MVP self he is, but Nikola Jokic, he's been playing fantastic. So could be a possible MVP you're watching tonight in either game with Embiid or Jokic. I think those are the top two guys right now in the MVP race.
All right, we don't have a graphic for the Pelicans, but we do have a comment about them. Tehran T. Tuez says, I love a good bet, but the Pelicans crush your parlay dreams sometimes. Yeah, Spencer, last night, not everyone, but I think most people would expect the Pels to come out and play well against Magic. And even without Brandon Ingram, maybe expect them to come out and find a way to win the game. They were 6.5-point favorites. I really like the Magic with that spread, but I didn't think the Pels would lose the game straight up. And so now Pelicans in a situation where they lost a little bit of that cushion. Luckily, the Blazers and Spurs both lost, but they're going to really need to get back on this winning train, and it starts tomorrow night with a game at home against Charlotte.
Right, yeah, that'll be a big one. Hopefully, BI can come back because his absence has really been felt. I mean, if his injury lingers, that could be trouble. But didn't expect it to be anything too serious, so he should be back for that Hornets game. And yeah, definitely need to get back in the win column because you don't want to get on a losing streak here. They want to try to jump the Lakers and maybe even the Clippers if they could really get hot. But yeah, definitely need to just get the win tomorrow and go on from there. Get Ingram healthy and then hopefully Zion down the stretch.
Devin, what did you see from the Pels last night that maybe a little disappointing? They just kind of fell behind early, and every time they would make a run and kind of catch up, they'd allow the Magic to do some things. You had Ross hitting 3-pointers last night like he was playing like his old self back out there last night. But they just couldn't find a way to take the lead and maybe pull ahead a little bit.
Yeah, I think sometimes with young teams, especially, you dig yourself into a hole. It's kind of hard to crawl out of. And on a night like yesterday, they should came out ready to play. You're playing against a Magic team that really has nothing much to play for here. You got to have these wins. These are give me wins here. And I think that's been kind of the tale of their season. Injuries with Brandon Ingram, when he's missed time, they've struggled. But you got CJ McCollum now, you expect him to do his thing, and he did. But there was just no other consistent production outside of him. And I think that just is kind of how this team is built. They're kind of led by their stars, and they're still kind of young, still learning how to win. So you expect them to win on nights like yesterday, but I think it's also a learning experience that, you got to have these games, especially as it comes down the stretch and you're trying to edge out the Lakers for that 9 spot.
All right, let's move on to some other sports. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on some of these, but I thought it was interesting to show a College World Series slide up there in the odds. And the reason why I find it interesting is if you look, obviously, number one, Texas. I mean, they're the clear-cut number one team in the country right now in college baseball. And LSU lost to them, I believe, 6-1 last Saturday night in Houston in the tournament out there. However, the number 2 team in the country right now is Ole Miss. You can get them at plus 2,500, which shows that Caesars and other sports books, Caesars Sportsbook, by the way, the official odds partner of bet.NOLA.com, they don't have as much confidence in the Ole Miss Rebels as do the people voting in these polls, because they're at plus 2,500, which is way behind number 23 Mississippi State, which was number 9 last week, by the way. So they could fool you a little bit at plus 1,500. We don't know how quickly they update these College World Series odds. Again, Mississippi State was number 9 going into their series against Tulane last week, then took it on the chin. Won big on Friday night, but then Tulane able to come back, win on Saturday, and then win again on Sunday to take 2 out of 3 from the Bulldogs. But I think, Spencer, when you look at lists like this, especially minor sports, sports that aren't necessarily in the eye of every bettor, there are bargains to be had at different times, because I don't think the lines makers and the odds makers react very quickly when it comes to certain series. You might be able to get a bargain on certain teams if you're really paying attention.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jim, because college baseball isn't as much in the national spotlight like college basketball or college football. And so, and we know how baseball can fluctuate a lot. So, with MLB, the odds makers, I'm sure it'd be a lot more reactionary to the way things are trending, where with college baseball, definitely some values to be had. It is only a sneak peek. They've got, plenty more teams to pick from. And I'm sure there's a lot of value to be had, especially with a lot of those SEC teams like Ole Miss and stuff. The SEC is so strong from top to bottom. I'm sure there's a lot of values to be had. LSU, I just had 14-1. I watched them play that real late game on Sunday against Baylor, and they can hit, but just the pitching right now for LSU a little concerning. So not sure if I like them too much at 14-1.
One thing about college baseball, we'll say this, and although you can get value on certain teams, I wouldn't dare make a bet. College baseball is different than a lot of other sports, because to me, you can't really tell enough about a team in college baseball until they get well into conference play. And so I think you're a good month away for trying to figure out who might be a good bargain, who might not. Because again, if the odds makers are still slow to react, you still can get a bargain on some of these teams that get hot and play well. Spence, I'm going to stick with you because we're moving on to NASCAR and I don't even know how to pronounce RUOFF Mortgage 500. How do you pronounce that? Moving on to auto racing.
I'm not too sure either, honestly.
I'm Ruoff.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if it's Ruoff or
I think
Ruff.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, well, we're going to go with that. NASCAR race is Saturday night in Las Vegas. Devin, if we could switch that slide for me real quick. Thank you. And if you look at these odds aren't anywhere near like they were last week. You don't see a whole bunch of double-digit odds. You got to go all the way past Joey Logano, Spencer, and find Blaney, Byron, and Harvick down there in double digits at 10-1, 15-1, 17-1. Is there anyone you like? It's hard to place a bet, really, to me, when you see odds like this, unless you really love one of these favorites. Are there any one of these favorites that you like?
I'd say the two favorites I like are the Joe Gibbs Toyota drivers, Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch. They were racing for the win last week, and then a late race caution came out and ruined their chances because they pitted and a few other cars they all pitted, but a couple of them took two tires, and in the overtime rules, they're able to get ahead and steal the win. So I think Busch and Truex would be the ones I'd pick to get redemption this week, because not only are they running well right now, they both are really good at this track. They're both former winners at Phoenix and do well here. But if I had to pick a couple of the double-digit odds guys, Ryan Blaney's a younger driver that's trending up, done well here at Phoenix before. And Kevin Harvick, I'm surprised his odds are at that. I thought he'd have been a lot lower than that. I'm surprised he's at 17-1, considering he's won at Phoenix 9 times. He's off to kind of a slow start this year, but this is his track. He owns this track throughout his career, so I think he might be the best value on this board.
Devin, you see anything that you like this weekend? I know you're in auto racing as well. Anything you like on this board, or do you like someone that maybe a little bit more of a longer shot? Obviously, this field probably isn't quite as wide as normal.
Yeah, I think they're among those top players. I think Martin Truex will probably be my top pick if I was going with a favorite. But I would watch out for William Byron. I think he's had some really good starts to the first couple of races. Just needs to finish better, but he's definitely been in the mix over the last 2 races and as a top 10 finisher. So I think William Byron is someone to watch as a long shot, but I really like probably Martin Truex Jr. On this particular race. But if you're going for a long shot and just want to put a few dollars down someone, William Byron, I think, wouldn't be a bad bet.
All right, Devin, you come back to us. We don't have a slide for golf, but I do want to talk a little bit about the Players' Championship. And we talked about it a little bit in Datitude. We talked about it earlier in the week. They are having a mess of a time here in this opening round because there with some really bad weather. I think they had a delay of over 3.5 hours earlier. Right now, Tommy Fleetwood leading at 6 under. But the afternoon session, I think, is just now getting underway. So obviously they won't finish that. The first round will go into tomorrow. I think with the weather forecast, it's supposed to be a lot like today. There's a good chance that they're playing second round well into Saturday. So we'll see how that affects them going forward. If they're able to even finish on Sunday, because right now, after the morning session, and you got Keith Mitchell, who's he's 5 under through 13 now, yet he's still got to go through the vaunted 16, 17, 18 in TPC. We'll see what happens there, because Harold Varner III was 7 under, had a 2-shot lead when he went to 17 until he hit one that back spun into the water. So, and then he bogeyed 18 as well. So he is sitting now at 3 under. It just goes to show you how fast things can change. A triple bogey on 17, a bogey on 18, and things change very quickly. So the Players' Championship, we talked about it. I really think it's going to be one of these players that knows how to play in these conditions. That's why I'm really interested to see how what kind of start Rory gets off to. Although the conditions right now, the players are saying they want to play as long as possible today, because the conditions are probably as favorable and easy as they're going to be the rest of the weekend. The rain has softened the greens. They are able to spin things. There's almost no wind right now. So they're trying to get as far as they can before going into treacherous conditions again tomorrow. All right, so that's it for the Players' Championship. We're going to be talking about that more, maybe a little bit on Data 2 tomorrow, but certainly over the weekend, along with all the basketball things that we have, we'll probably have another update on golf and maybe a best bet, maybe an daily best bet at some point this weekend. We'll talk about golf and see where that's going to lead us. Okay. Moving on, we are about set to wrap up the show, but we do want to talk a little bit of football, because obviously there have been some big football moves. Spencer, we talked about it earlier in the week with Russell Wilson being traded to Denver, and now Aaron Rodgers obviously staying with Green Bay. There's news potentially today that Khalil Mack could be moving from the Bears, and just talk about all these different aspects and how do you think they're going to change the lines? Already we see Denver ridiculous to me. I mean, I think they were somewhere along the lines of 25-1. That they cut their odds in half because they signed Russell Wilson. And if you want to take Denver at 1,200 right now, I tell you what, I will give you my phone number on the side and you can just book it with me.
Right. Yeah. Basically throwing your money away at those odds. Yeah. I think Denver is going to have way too much pressure on them this season. I mean, I think they could eventually win one with Russ, but this season, I don't see it. I think that Matthew Stafford thing, that was lightning in a bottle. That's not the case. When you get a new quarterback, it tends to be a little bit of growing pains. But Russ is a veteran, there shouldn't be too many growing pains. But I just think in that division, in that conference, they're just going to have too many obstacles. I know they're not on this list, but I think the Chargers could end up being a really good value. They're the team that's closing in to acquire Khalil Mack. And I mean, everyone's talking about the Chiefs, obviously, and in Denver, and the Raiders with Josh McDaniels. But I'm thinking the Chargers could be a sneaky team to make a run.
Yeah, you talk about the Chargers. I didn't even put them in this list. And I'm trying to see if I can doing this live. I love doing things live. But if you look at the Chargers right now, they are going down the list 25-1 to win the Super Bowl. Devin, maybe that is a good bet. I mean, I think you look down this list, and the fact that we don't know what changes are going to be made, we don't know who's going to get drafted. I like Vegas right now at plus 5,000, and I know that Denver got better because they got Russell Wilson. Kansas City is Kansas City, but we saw that Derek Carr is feeling comfortable with this team. We'll see how they go forward, but I'm really, if I got to pick a long shot right now, Vegas is already a team that I put a couple bucks down on.
Yeah, I think the AFC West is going to be one of the best divisions in football, if it isn't already. I mean, you got Patrick Mahomes, now Russell Wilson added to the mix. I know there's some rumblings about Derek Carr possibly on the move, but I think they're committed to him for another season. And they have stability now. They don't have the distractions they've had in the past with the Raiders, which I think is kind of a breath of fresh air for that organization. It seems like every time we turn, they're having issues. But now that they have Josh McDaniels in the fold, I really think they can kind of put everything they have behind them, because they have a talented team. they're just not consistent, and they haven't been fully trusting Derek Carr to lead them to where they need to go. So I like Vegas. I'm kind of surprised about Tampa being at plus 2,800. I mean, who's playing quarterback there? I was a little surprised about
no
that.
idea.
But
I think that's way too good odds. I mean, way too high odds, I should say.
I mean,
You
I don't
can't
know how
touch Tampa Bay.
they have higher odds in New Orleans and New Orleans, maybe bringing back Jameis Winston. So that one confuses me a little bit. But I mean, other than that, Denver is just fool's gold. They want you to take it, and people are going to take it because they have Russell Wilson. But I want to see what other moves they make because they still have some. They're going to need some more weapons because they trade away a tight end, a few defensive pieces as well to get Russell Wilson. Plus, they trade away some picks, so they're not going to be able to get better immediately unless they go through free agency, and who knows how much money they'll have there. But I also I'm wondering a little bit about Washington and wonder if their odds change any since they traded for Carson Wentz, I believe yesterday or the day before as well.
The Washington Commanders is going down this list, and I go way down the list. They are plus 6,000 right now, so maybe that is a good bet. The NFC East we know is, other than Dallas, really. I mean, nothing tough there. I mean, by the way, if you're wondering what those numbers are next to them, T17 means the Saints are tied they're in order 1 through 32. The Saints are 17th. They have the 17th best odds or worst odds, however you want to look at it, to win the Super Bowl next year, plus 4,000. They play in what's got to be considered a really bad division and maybe the worst division in football next year. So whether that's a good or bad thing, I'm not sure, because I think that for a team like Vegas, if you're able to get through that gauntlet and find a way to upset some teams, I think you're more battle tested. We'll see if that matters come towards the end. Although you have a better chance of making the playoffs, obviously, if you're in a bad division and you come out well. And I agree with Devin. If the Saints get Jameis Winston back, or even if it's Teddy Bridgewater, because it's most likely going to be one of those two guys. Don't believe the rumors that have been floating around social media about Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't see that happening at all. We will talk about that again tomorrow with Doug Mouton and Attitude. But some interesting odds here. We just threw them up just kind of to take a look at. We will talk more about that, obviously, as we go further and probably after March Madness is over, because we're going to spend most of our time the next couple of weeks after this week talking about March Madness, and especially next week. That's all we're really going to be focused on. We got plenty of time before baseball starts. We will be our eyes straight ahead all over the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments that coming up with Selection Sunday this week. And I believe the women, their selection show is Monday. Am I correct, guys, on that?
I think it's Sunday now.
Yeah, I think it's Sunday night after
Sunday?
the men's. Yeah.
Okay. So, and I know they get started right away as well. So we'll be watching that. Who knows? We may talk about the NIT a little bit. We'll see what happens there. We want to wrap up the show with our daily best bet segment, and we finally turned the corner a little bit, Spencer. We had a lot of brown and red all over this list on Monday, but finally we got some green on there. We have some that are still pending, but we've turned things around a little bit. You got the DeAndre Ayton bet. We got the Bucks minus 4.5 over the Hawks yesterday. We have Brooks Koepka, a top 10 finish at TPC. He is yet to tee off today, so we'll see how that goes. And then we have some interesting bets tonight. You got Sixers minus 4.5 over the Nets. You can talk about that one a little bit. And then obviously South Carolina SEC tournament, they will be tipping off probably in about I think fairly
Very
shortly.
soon.
So soon. If you want to get that bet in, you probably need to get it in pretty soon. But let's talk about that one right off. I don't get Spencer White, South Carolina as a 5.5 point dog to Mississippi State when South Carolina is a 7 seed, and they've been the one that's been hot.
Right. Yeah, I didn't either. Yeah, I was tempted to go with the money line there because I think they could easily win that straight up. But I feel really comfortable about them covering that. Like, I think it's because they split the season series, so I think they're fairly evenly matched. But I'm thinking that at that 5.5, I think it'll be they'll definitely, even if they don't win, they should definitely come within 5 points there. And then the Sixers over the Nets, I feel good about. I just don't think the Nets are ready for that. I don't think they're ready for the smoke that the 76ers. The 76ers are rolling right now at Harden and Embiid. It'll be a revenge game for Harden. It was supposed to be Ben Simmons' revenge game for the Nets, but he's still out. He won't be there. I think if they'd have had that reinforcement, then they might actually be the favorites tonight. But without Simmons, I mean, it's going to be too much on Kyrie and KD. And, KD just coming back and Embiid playing at an MVP level. I'm taking the Sixers all day here.
Okay, Devin, you can come back to us for the rest of the show. I think that, and the game has actually started. It's already down. South Carolina is a 3.5-point favorite, which means they've started well. Kind of what we thought might happen. So we'll see how that goes a little bit going down the line. I want to get final thoughts. I'm going to start with you, Devin. Final thoughts here as we go into a very exciting weekend. I know for us sports betting people and really just sports fans in general, these are this week, next week, and the week after, to me, are some of the funnest weekends in sports because of all the crazy action that's going, not just with March Madness. You got golf, you got auto racing. Now we know baseball's coming back. We got college baseball. It's just an incredibly busy time, especially for us here at bet.NOLA.com. And Zach Ewing's missing all the fun.
Yeah, I can't believe he decided the week that the brackets come out to go overseas. But no, seriously, checking out really some of these smaller conferences. I kind of get a feel for who teams like Duke and Arizona are going to be playing in a few weeks. So I'm trying to make my rounds and see. So I've heard Kent State from the MAC get some hype and a potential team to bust brackets. Memphis has really played strongly over the last few weeks. And I know it's a team that Zach actually wrote about on the road to NOLA.com. You can find on bet.NOLA.com. So it's going to be interesting to watch some of these smaller conferences continue to finish out their conference tournaments. We've seen some thrilling game winners already. I want to say the Ncaa had a game winner. I believe the SoCon had a game winner as well, where a guy made a 30-foot shot over two people. So it's already kind of been the madness part for some of these smaller conferences to get in. So it's going to be interesting to watch and see who matches up with who and how these teams will fare over the next week or so.
Spencer, final thoughts as we go into this crazy weekend.
Yeah, Devin hit the nail on the head with all the college matchups. Today it was really tough to come up with one for daily best bets because there's just so many to pick from. It was kind of overwhelming there. We kind of collabed on the South Carolina thing, and it's just be interesting to see how it all shakes out here. I'm thinking that like you had said earlier, Jim, like one of these teams that doesn't win the tournament, their conference tournament could maybe be a good value to win it all because it's all about getting on these hot streaks and. It's unpredictable every year with March, but I'm really looking forward to Selection Sunday. Sunday, especially, Selection Sunday and then the NASCAR race. So that's a day I always look forward to. The race, and once the race ends, then you got Selection Sunday. So it's one of my favorite days of the year. Really looking forward to that, and also glad that MLB's back.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for us here at bet.NOLA.com. It will certainly be one of our busiest times, and we are definitely looking forward to it. Again, tomorrow in Datsuta, we'll have Doug Moon on, sports director at WWL TV, and we'll be talking a little bit about everything. We will get into the Saints a little bit, but I want to talk to him about LSU men. I want to talk to him about the Pelicans. I want to talk to him a little bit about what he thinks about Selection Sunday, and I certainly want to talk to him about what he thinks about baseball coming back. Doug is a big baseball guy, and we'll be looking into that. But we want to make sure you keep following us. Next week, we're going to have updated content throughout each day on Saturday and Sunday. And a heads up, we may have an earlier show on Monday. We may even have a guest. We don't know. Devin may be at Caesars. We're not 100% sure, but make sure you pay attention. We're talking about going on a little bit earlier on Monday than we normally do. And again, with a busy week, we're not sure what our plans are for next Thursday. So make sure you follow us at bet.NOLA.com. And we'll say hello to Zach for you. I mean, he's out there drinking pints and probably eating bratwurst and whatever the heck else it is. He is probably enjoying himself.
Well, he was at the soccer game the other day, so he's enjoying some soccer as well. I know
maybe he's hanging out with Ted Lasso.
He's always slipping in soccer on the best bet, so I'm sure he got plenty of that.
I'm sure he did, and so we will be back again. Stay with us at bet.NOLA.com. Going to be a fun time for Spencer, the Guru Urquhart. I thank Devin Jackson for going out to Caesars for me. I'm Jim Derry. We will see you on Monday with the Bayou Bet Show. Good afternoon, and have a great weekend, everyone.